Let's imagine we are opening a bar and we have already hired our first employee, Jennifer. Jennifer will be a waitress, so let's create an object for her like this. Now we want to hire a bartender, John Novak. His supervisor will be the same as Jennifer's, so we decide to copy the waitress object and update the first and last name like this. Bartender equals waitress, and then bartender age equals 29. Bartender first name is John, and bartender second name is Novak. When we look at both objects now, we can see that our waitress name has also changed to John Novak. By copying the object, we unintentionally modified the waitress name when modifying the bartender's name. Let's see what happens when we try the same thing with primitive types, for example strings. Let A equals Jenny and let B equals A. And then B equals John. And this works as intended. B is modified while A remains unchanged. When we copy a primitive type value like a string, number, or boolean, a new place in memory is physically reserved, and the copy is stored in this new reserved place. Now, when we modify B, it does not affect A in any way. Objects, unlike primitive types, are reference types. This means that when we create a variable for an object, we create a reference to a place in memory where the data is stored. When we copy a reference type like this, bartender equals waitress, a new place in memory is reserved for a reference named bartender, but it still points to the same place in memory, storing the data of the waitress. Now, any changes to the bartender also affect the waitress. We can also check for reference equality in this case. Console log bartender equals waitress, and we get true, so references are equal. Instead of copying a reference, we want to make an actual copy of object's data. Fortunately, there are easy ways to fix this problem in JavaScript. First, we can use Object.assign like this. Bartender equals Object.assign object, waitress. Now, if we run our code again, everything works as expected. Another way to copy an object is to use the spread operator. So let bartender, spread operator, waitress. And let's check for reference equality in this scenario. We get false, references are not equal anymore. Now we have successfully copied an object. However, John gets a new supervisor named Josh Smith, while Jennifer is still supervised by Mary Jones. Let's update the bartender's supervisor. Bartender, supervisor, first name is Josh now, and bartender, supervisor, second name is Smith. But something unintended happens again. When we take a closer look, we see that the waitress supervisor was changed to Josh Smith too. This happens because we made a shallow copy. Only primitive values were properly copied, while the embedded supervisor object was copied as a reference, still pointing to the same data in both waitress and bartender. To properly copy reference properties embedded in our object, we need to make a deep copy. We can do that by first converting the object to JSON format and then converting it back to an object using JSON parse and JSON stringify methods. So bartender equals JSON parse, JSON stringify, waitress. Now, the supervisor data is copied to a separate place in memory and our code works as intended. Also, when we check for reference equality, we get false. To summarize, understanding the differences between reference copy, shallow copy, and deep copy is crucial for managing data correctly in JavaScript and avoiding unintended side effects in your code. For primitive types, copying creates a new place in memory, and changes to the copy do not affect the original. For reference types, like objects, copying creates a new reference pointing to the same place in memory, so changes to the copy affect the original. Shallow copy copies the object's primitive values but references for nested objects. Use Object.assign or the spread operator to make a shallow copy. Deep copy copies the object's primitive values and creates separate copies for nested objects, ensuring no shared references. To make a deep copy, use JSON parse and then JSON stringify object.